Crimson rivers, goodbye. Well, so much for climbing. Regulus turns his head and heaves a sigh when he sees Evan shaking his head at him. Oh, get fucked. You know how I feel about climbing, Evan. I do know, Evan agrees, winking as he points down. Regulus reflexively follows the gesture, immediately dizzy when he can't see the ground, and he clings to the sturdy branch beneath them as he curses under his breath. When he looks up with a glare, Evan only laughs at him. Really, the view at the top makes every bit of climbing worth it. That's where we're all trying to go, you know? Just trying to get to the view. I'd rather be on the ground, Regulus grumbles. You say that as if every glimpse of the top doesn't steal your breath, Evan challenges wryly. Being on the ground only means you can get lower. Trust me, getting higher is exactly where you want to be. Regulus scoffs. I'm fine here, thanks. But you go on. Don't let me stop you if you're so eager to get to the top. Ah, Evan says, his face softening into a sad smile. Well, unfortunately, I can't go any higher than this. I'll never see the top, I'm afraid. But you can climb, Regulus mutters, confused. His face scrunches up. You're like the best climber. Evan breaks out into a grin and bats his eyelashes as he waves his hand as if to say, Oh, pish-posh. You flatter me. He chuckles and shakes his head, then tips his head back and smiles softly. Even the best climbers can fall, lover boy. Yes, which means the worst climbers are even more likely to. Hence the reason I will be refraining from climbing at all, Regulus declares. Can't I just stay down here with you? Just because I can't climb any higher doesn't mean you shouldn't, Evan says, jerking his chin towards the sky. I mean, who could begrudge you that view? Regulus tips his head back, his breath punching out of him when he sees James and Sirius perched on a branch high above them, so high that they're framed by a magnificent sunrise, impossibly dotted with glowing, glimmering stars. They're kicking their legs happily and grinning, and somehow Regulus can hear their laughter like it's in his head. Instinctively, Regulus calls out for them, but they either can't hear him from here, or they don't care to acknowledge him at all, and he really can't tell which it is. He blows out a deep breath, deflating in on himself as he stares up at them with some kind of inner distress. They're so high. There's absolutely no way he could ever reach them. You could get there if only you'd try, Evan murmurs, sounding oddly solemn, and Regulus glances back towards him, only to feel his stomach lurch when he sees a spear driven right through Evan's middle. Evan, Regulus chokes out. You're closer than you think, Regulus, Evan tells him, lips curling up like he doesn't even notice the spear embedded in his stomach. All you have to do is climb. Evan, Regulus repeats, his voice coming out sharp with a restless, frantic panic that makes his heart race. He stares wide-eyed at the spear. Evan, you... It's okay, Evan whispers. Falling isn't as bad as you think. In a way, it's a bit like flying. The branch beneath them, that seemed so sturdy before, gives a devastating and sudden crack, and Evan grants him a faint smile, soft and sad around the edges, before promptly tipping backwards with his hand outstretched. Regulus instantly lunges forward, crying out his name, but he doesn't manage to save Evan the way Evan always saved him, every time. Their fingers only just brush before hands clamp down on Regulus all over from behind. Cold hands, clawed hands, cadaverous hands, dripping with blood, his blood, as his skin is ripped into. He screams and fights and calls for Sirius and James to come save him, begging them, but they don't look down. They don't care. They don't stop laughing. Okay, shh, I promise, you're okay. The words break through, snatching him right awake with an abruptness that startles him. And he automatically tries to lash out, but he's being held down. It only makes him thrash harder, flailing and fighting against the grip. I know, I'm sorry, just breathe. You're going to hurt yourself if you don't relax. As soon as you relax, I'll let you go, I swear. It takes a bit for those words to actually register, and even longer for Regulus to digest them. When they finally do take shape in his brain, in a way he can process them and make sense of them, he slowly settles down, breathing hard as the world comes back into focus. His vision is blurry from tears, gritty from lack of sleep, and there's a light bathing the room in reality, assuring him that he's here and not there. Regulus, do you want me to let you go now? Yes, Regulus rasps, please. Sirius does instantly, rolling away quickly like he might need to get out of range just in case, and Regulus can't even blame him for that. Regulus doesn't do anything, though. He just sits up, panting, as he scoots back to press his back against the wall and draw his legs up to his chest, wrapping his arms around them. Clumsily, he wipes his tears away and takes a long moment to calm down, to breathe. Sirius settles down across from him, watching him with tension around his eyes, looking very, very tired. "It was just a nightmare, Reggie." "I know," Regulus says quietly. "Do you want to talk about it?" Sirius asks. "Was I calling out for you?" Regulus stumbles, and Sirius nods carefully. "James too?" Another nod, and Regulus heaves a sigh as his shoulders slump. "It's not... I don't even really dream about either of you. Not exactly. It's this reoccurring nightmare. Evan is always there. We're in a tree." "You fall?" Sirius guesses. Regulus swallows. "Evan does. I can never save him." "That's not your fault," Sirius declares firmly. "What happened to Evan wasn't your fault, Regulus. Nothing that happened in the arena was your fault, but especially not that." "I made him laugh," Regulus whispers. "No one ever thinks to look up, not until there's a sound, and I made him laugh. He'd be alive if—" "Regulus," Sirius cuts in, pained, his throat rising and falling as he slowly shakes his head. "He wouldn't be, regardless of how he died. It's the brutal truth, but it is the truth." "He could have won," Regulus croaks. Sirius's lips press into a thin line, but he takes a deep breath, then slowly lets it out. All he says is, "I'm sorry, Reggie." "Yeah," Regulus mutters, dropping his gaze. "Me too." "He didn't blame you. He wouldn't," Sirius murmurs. Regulus huffs out a weak laugh and lifts his gaze, finding Sirius as sincere as Regulus has ever seen him. "You didn't even know him. I didn't even know him, Sirius. Not really." "All right, maybe not, but—" Sirius purses his lips, then looks at him gently, like he might shatter. "I know what it is to have a best friend, a really good one, in fact, and they tend to not blame you for the things you can't forgive yourself for." The thing is, Regulus might actually shatter after hearing that, because it somehow stings and soothes him all at once. What falls out of Regulus's mouth is a choked, "It's not fair," because it's not. It isn't fair that everyone else gets to have what he can't, what he lost, what he doesn't have the will to take. "I know it's not," Sirius agrees, his eyes sad. "I know." And that's the thing, isn't it? Sirius does know. The games took plenty away from him too, even if Regulus didn't see it all. He knows for sure now anyway. He even knows that all the games after that he mentored for, especially this one, took things from Sirius as well. He even lost his best friend, briefly, along with his brother. Getting them back can never fully make up for that, and Regulus knows it. He's not sure that it ever will for him either. Pandora cooks breakfast, for which Sirius is thankful, because he desperately does not want Remus to be too busy doing that to spend time with him. It's something light and quick. They're all probably better off eating together in a group setting, but Regulus has been off since his nightmare and isn't ready to leave his room, and James has, for no apparent reason, taken 3 showers back-to-back and can't be convinced to abandon his 4th. James and Regulus, along with Pandora, have insisted that Sirius spend his morning with Remus, and he can't stop himself from giving in to the urge to do so. They sequestered themselves away in Sirius's room, and Sirius is draped over him dramatically, randomly releasing fussy, garbled noises of displeasure, like he may be dying. Every time, Remus snorts fondly into his hair and massages his scalp until he shuts up again. Sirius would like to spend his morning with Remus having vivacious, messy sex made of desperation, because that feels very suitable for their dreadful predicament. But Remus had vetoed that option with immense and undeniable regret. Sirius has checked twice to see if Remus has changed his mind, but Remus insists that it's best if they don't. He swears up and down that it would only make them feel worse, and the sex itself would be drenched in loss, and them preemptively missing each other, which would only add to the pain. So Sirius lets it go. After all, Remus is more experienced with sex and such, and it's not like he would insist on it anyway if Remus is saying no. He just wants Remus to know he is very down for instant gratification, even if it leads to him getting his feelings hurt more than they already are. They've both been quiet, but Sirius has kept an eye on the clock, his stomach dropping out from underneath him every time he checks it to see more time slipping away. They're running out of time, and Sirius doesn't know what to do. He doesn't think there's anything he can do, though not for a lack of internal debate and mental plans drawn up that had to be repeatedly discarded because they wouldn't actually work. What if, Sirius starts very carefully, but he doesn't even get to voice the full thought before Remus interrupts. Won't work. You don't even know what I was going to say. Something about you packing me in your bag and carrying me out of here, or just sneaking me away, or kidnapping me and hoping no one notices, Remus says. Sirius lifts his head and rests his chin on Remus's chest, squinting at him suspiciously. Can you read my mind? Every dirty, naughty, shameful thought, Remus quips immediately, lips twitching. Every time you see me, it's a steady stream of, okay, remain calm. There he is, be normal, just be normal. Fuck, how do I be normal? Sirius blinks at him and raises his head up, genuinely feeling a little uneasy. Wait, can you actually read my— Fuck's sake, no, Remus cuts in with a choked laugh, his eyes lighting up. Is that what you think, genuinely? Pretty much, Sirius admits, his face getting hot. Remus looks so fond. That, or some version of it that's close, basically. I can't help it. You make me feel like I'm going to explode. I told you, I like you just as you really are, Sirius, Remus murmurs, tugging his hand from where it's buried in Sirius's hair for the sole purpose of working it back there, scratching gently at his scalp. There's a faint smile on his face, a little nostalgic. Do you want to know something? Yes, Sirius answers immediately. I actually had to work up the courage to touch your hair the first time that I did, Remus informs him. I was nervous. I wanted to, very, very much. But I was still relearning how to let myself have the things that I want. So I started out slow, with just the very end, working up to winding a few strands around my finger, and then, finally, I just went for it. Even just that felt like an act of rebellion. I was scared and thrilled, and then the only thing that mattered was how it felt to touch you. Every time, Sirius, you matter more. Sirius swallows harshly, his eyes stinging. He blinks rapidly and whispers, I'm going to miss you so fucking much. Every time you do, every time I cross your mind, take that as a reminder to treat yourself with care, Remus whispers back, his eyebrows furrowed. That's just me being there to tell you to be kind to yourself, to eat if you haven't, to rest if you need it, to slow down and do it one day at a time. That's all it is. You'll think of me too, won't you? Sirius asks. Remus snorts weakly. Constantly, I assure you. Then I assure you, Sirius mumbles, that's just me being with you as a reminder that you deserve better than what you have. Never forget that, Remus. Never forget that you deserve good things, and I so desperately want you to have them. Deal, Remus croaks. Sirius takes a deep, shuddering breath, his stomach cramping with fear. I'm scared I'll forget. I won't mean to, but what if, Remus, Sirius, what if I get it, all of this, with you, mixed up? What if I invent memories we never had, or forget the ones we do have? I don't want to do that. I don't know how to stop it. You won't, Remus cuts in. And if you do, that's okay. It's okay. Any memory you lose, I'll hold on to. Any memory you invent it's real in some other life. How about that? And you can ask James or Regulus for help, you know? I'm aware that you're determined to take care of them, but don't be afraid to let them take care of you too. They want to, okay? That means something. Okay, Sirius rasps. He bites the inside of his cheek, trying to stave off the devastation, creeping in like a vice around his throat. You're sure I can't just steal you away? Sadly, no, Remus tells him, sighing. I have a tracker in my thigh, and it would send out a notification if I cut it out. Don't think it hasn't crossed my mind, because it has, but, he swallows, I'd never get far. They'd come for me. I'd be dead before I ever made it out of the Hallow. And my dad, Sirius, he's still alive. They could kill him if I even dare to. Okay, I'm sorry, Sirius interrupts quickly, trying to soothe the rising pitch of distress in Remus's voice. He reaches up to cradle Remus's cheek, smiling at him softly. It's okay, Remus, I understand. I'm so sorry. I used to think about it a lot, you know? I used to come up with plans on how to break out and get away. I was rather obsessive about it, actually, and then I just stopped doing it. I don't even know when. Just one day, I realized I had essentially given up and given in, Remus explains, and Sirius doesn't think he's ever heard anything more tragic in his life. It doesn't feel right, the mere concept of Remus Lupin giving up and giving in to anything. I don't know when I lost hope, Sirius, but I know exactly when I got it back, the precise moment I met you. I'll remember you as many times as you need, Sirius murmurs. his throat feeling thick. I meant what I said. I have to come back here every year, and whatever it takes, I will make sure I see you again. I promise, Remus. If you can't, Remus starts. There is no can't, Sirius says sharply. I will. Remus's face softens. He smiles slightly. Okay. Sirius relaxes a little. Okay. They stare at each other for a long beat, and then Sirius exhales explosively. What's going to happen to you? I mean, do you just stay here? No, Remus says, grimacing slightly. Servants who aren't on assignment are kept in Azkaban. It's a prison where we reside until we're chosen and approved for assignments. Only a few servants never go there. Those that are on assignment full-time at Riddle's Castle. The rest of us have to remain there. What's it like? Sirius asks cautiously. Azkaban, I mean. Remus falls silent. Tension threaded through his body. Something blocked in his neutral expression that makes Sirius almost sure Remus won't tell him. There are a lot of things that Remus doesn't feel comfortable talking about, and Sirius doesn't want to push, even if he is curious. Still, in the end, Remus surprises him. It's cold. So cold and hollow. It's dead silent in the cells, because we have to keep on our masks, even there. And the silence it makes it impossible not to hear the screams from the lower levels. That's where they, experiment, and, well, yeah. Sirius feels his heart sink, just thinking about Remus being there. Remus clearly has said as much as he can, so Sirius forces himself not to ask further questions, and maybe there's a part of him that's terrified to know more. The thought of Remus in those conditions makes his skin crawl, and every cell in his body scream out in protest. Will you have any assignments? Sirius asks, strained. I don't know, Remus murmurs, and he heaves a sigh when Sirius's eyes sink shut. His fingers scrunch in Sirius's hair, giving him a gentle shake, encouraging him to open his eyes. When he does, Remus is smiling, just a bit. Don't worry about any of that, Sirius. Let's just be here together, yeah? Yeah, okay, Sirius rasps, darting his eyes toward the clock, and instantly feeling a wave of tears assault him when he sees how much time they have, or don't have, really. Sirius? Remus says softly. It's too soon, Sirius croaks. I don't want to go. For the very first time, I don't want to go, and it's entirely your fault, because I don't want to leave you. I'm sorry, sweetheart, Remus whispers. We didn't have enough time, Sirius chokes out, squeezing his eyes shut as he buries his face down in Remus's chest, helpless to the sobs that wrench out of him. Remus strokes his hair, and that is all. James has had 6 showers. Every time he got out, he'd last maybe 10 minutes before getting back in. The steam had worked wonders on his leg, and it's the only thing that has been able to work the chill out of his bones. He dreamed of Vanity last night, trying to keep her from freezing, but he hadn't been warm enough, and she'd frozen before shoving her icy fingers right into his chest. He's been shivering ever since. Still, the showers did help, and he doesn't have a 7th, mostly because the pads of his fingers have gotten wrinkly in a way he doesn't like. He goes out to the kitchen instead, trying to let Pandora's chatter warm him up. It does, a bit. Not too long now, James, and you'll be home, Pandora tells him from where she's sitting next to him at the table. She made him a steaming cup of tea, which he's been sucking down, letting it warm him from the inside out. Will I ever get to see you again? James mumbles. Pandora gives him a gentle smile. Well, you'll see me for the victory tour, of course, and you'll see me every year for the reaping. I arrive a little early, and there'd be no harm in stopping by to say hello, if that's something you'd like. Yeah, I think I really would, James tells her, completely sincere. He smiles at her weakly. You're my friend, Pandora. I know that may come as a surprise, considering my position, but I want you to know that I am truly honored to be your friend, and Regulus's. Pandora says softly. You're more than victors to me. Please never think differently. I couldn't, James says simply, because he really couldn't. Pandora has made sure of that. He reaches out and grabs her hand, hesitating only for a moment before lifting it and pressing a careful kiss to the back of her fingers. He smiles at her sheepishly, then he lets go. I only just learned what that meant last night, but I really do admire you and all that you've done for us, so I think it's fitting that you're the first person I ever do that to. Thank you, Pandora, for everything. Tears flood Pandora's eyes pretty much instantly, and James's smile drops as his eyes bulge, but she chokes out a wet laugh and flaps her hands, sniffling. No, it's Don't look so worried. I'm emotional, I suppose. You mean so much to me, James. You and Regulus. Sirius as well. You can't possibly know what all of you mean to me. I think we have an idea, James murmurs gently. You're important to us too. That sets Pandora off all over again, and she stands up swiftly to swivel around the table, waiting only long enough to get his permission before hugging him while he's still in his chair. He leans into her, helplessly fond. She still smells like lemons. When she lets him go, Pandora laughs and mutters under her breath about needing to fix her makeup, squeezing his shoulder before sweeping off. James thinks she just needs a moment, so he watches her go with a soft smile. She's right. He didn't expect to care for her as much as he does, but he's never been more grateful to be wrong. It's special what Pandora represents for him. Her and Dorcas, Gideon and Fabian too. Though the Hallow may be hollow, there are still Hallows with so much life and goodness inside them that it fills him with this unrelenting hope that he's more than happy to cling to. This is what he means about believing that there's good in people, in this world, even this world that has so much pain and horror in it that finding a hint of good seems impossible. But it's not, and that's important to him. James sits at the table and finishes his tea, but he doesn't linger for long. Sirius is with Remus, as he should be, and James thinks he would literally die before interrupting them. They deserve their time together. He's still restless, though, not particularly wanting to be alone, and of course there's always a part of him that wants to be near Regulus. He hasn't seen him since the interviews. The moment they made it back to the suite, they separated and didn't find their way back to each other. That's sort of their thing, isn't it? Really, James supposes it's fitting that he's the one to seek Regulus out again. To keep trying, in spite of all the reasons, there is no point. If anyone knows how to weaponize optimism, it's him. He's still him, even after everything. Somehow that makes living just a little easier. Taking a deep breath, James uses his cane to help haul himself out of his chair, shuffling down the hall and pausing briefly outside of Sirius's door. He doesn't listen. He just stands there, feeling a wave of protectiveness wash over him, his fingers itching with the need to shelter Sirius and Remus from the loss they're enduring. He wants to, but he can't. Swallowing, James continues, stopping only once he's outside Regulus's door this time. His stomach wriggles around with nerves, but he gathers his courage and knocks. Reg, it's, James. I mean, obviously, you know it's me. Are you there? Well, you might be on your balcony, so you probably can't even hear me, but I'm here, Regulus calls, his voice muffled, like he's not close to the door this time. Oh, James blinks, genuinely startled that 1, Regulus isn't out on the balcony, and 2, he's actually willing to respond to James at all. Clearing his throat, James fiddles anxiously with the handle of his cane. Would it be all right if I came in? There's a long beat of silence that stretches on so much that James is pretty sure it's going to be a no, which he would respect, but Regulus surprises him by saying, "Yes, okay." Hesitantly, James eases the door open and slips inside, shutting it behind him. He immediately figures out why Regulus sounded so far away. He isn't out on the balcony, but he's standing in the doorway of it, leaning against the open door and looking outside, his back to James. He doesn't turn around, and neither of them speak for a long moment. Finally, James tentatively asks, "Saying goodbye to the view?" This, for some reason, is the wrong thing to say. He hears Regulus's sharp intake of breath, and sees his entire body go stiff with tension. And he doesn't know what he's done wrong. He always gets it wrong with Regulus, no matter how hard he tries, every single fucking time. "Yeah," Regulus says, clipped, something like that. Sorry, I don't know what I said, but I'm sorry," James mumbles wearily, his shoulders slumping. "Don't worry about it," Regulus responds, the tension slowly draining from his shoulders. His voice has an edge to it, though. "Why are you here, James? What do you need?" James feels his heart drop when he realizes that Regulus is doing this, allowing James in only because he thinks that James needs something from him. And James doesn't want that to be what this is about. He doesn't want Regulus to ignore his own discomforts in the endeavor to take care of him, regardless of what he actually wants. Don't do that. You don't have to do that, Regulus," James says with a frown. "You don't have to prioritize my needs over your own, especially when they clash with your own." "Shut up, James," Regulus replies dismissively. "I can't give you anything else, but I can give you this. This is something I can do, so I'll do it. What do you need?" "You," James thinks, Sirius, my parents, Gideon and Fabian and Peter, Irene and Matthias, Vanity and Hodge, world peace. James trails off, because, obviously, Regulus can't give him any of that, and James doesn't expect him to. I don't know, we're going home today, soon. I suppose I wanted to talk to you before we left, that's all. Took a lot to get here, didn't it? Regulus murmurs. Yeah, James says quietly. Yeah, it did. Regulus heaves a sigh. It'll be nice for you, seeing your parents, I mean. It will, James agrees carefully, even as his heart jumps and his fingers tingle with the reminder that he'll be seeing his mom and dad again today. But, Regulus, well, what about you? Are you, excited to see yours again? Ecstatic, Regulus says flatly, and James winces. Regulus has a very complicated relationship with his parents. James knows that, so he isn't entirely sure how to navigate this conversation with him. With Sirius, it's easier, because Sirius hates their guts. Regulus, James knows, doesn't. At least not entirely. James bites his lip. Will they be angry with you for our love story? Regulus asks wryly. Yes, most likely. They won't care that we did it to survive. They won't care that we didn't have a choice. They'll really despise you, you know? Yes, I know. I take it as a compliment. James pauses, then coughs. No offense. Regulus releases a soft, quiet laugh that doesn't last very long, but still lights James up from the inside out anyway. None taken, I promise. It is a compliment, I suppose. In any case, I don't really care. I just don't have it in me to care what they're going to think or how they'll act. If I'm disowned, the same as Sirius, then so be it. If not, well, sure. Their opinion has never seemed more meaningless to me than it does now. Is that a good thing? James checks cautiously. Regulus pauses, then hums. No, I don't think so. I don't think it's a bad thing either. It just is. Right, James says. Well, is there anyone else you're the least bit excited to see? Barty, Regulus replies instantly, no hesitation, a low note of yearning in his voice that makes James instinctively grind his teeth. He shoves the reflexive response of jealousy down as far as it will go, because even if it is Barty, James is grateful that Regulus has someone he's eager to get back to. He doesn't have anyone else, not even his fucking parents, so James smothers his jealousy and decides to be grateful for Barty instead. I can practically hear you fuming back there. James clears his throat. No, it's good. I mean, really, it's good that you have him. Trying to be the better man? Trying to be a better man? It's a choice that I never want to stop trying to make. It's harder than it should be sometimes, harder than it used to be. You're a good man, Regulus says softly. Better than most, even without trying. It's okay if you don't get it right every time. It's like you said, they can never take who you are away from you, and I promise you, you are good. Never doubt that. I love you, James blurts out, the words sort of just tumbling from his lips because he feels so full. Just so full of so many things, good and bad, and that's how it comes out of him, love. Every time, it's always love. Regulus can't say things like that to him, things that make him want to fold in half and fucking cry, and not expect this response. Regulus ducks his head forward, his shoulders pulled taut, and James can hear him taking in a measured breath before slowly releasing it. He doesn't reply. He doesn't say anything at all. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, James stutters, shaking his head, and he squeezes his eyes shut. I only said it because it's true, not because I expect anything from you. I don't, Regulus, not even when we get home. When we get home, Regulus rasps. I think we're both going to need time and space. I think it's best if we... I won't push, James cuts in firmly, eyes snapping open. He sets his shoulders because he needs Regulus to hear this, to know it. I promise, I won't push, okay? Regulus deflates a little, exhaling all at once. Thank you, he whispers, and then, I know that's not enough, but that's all I've got, and I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry that I... Stop, Regulus, stop, James cuts in, his chest feeling tight because he can see how much Regulus is struggling with this, with all of it. That's enough. It's more than enough. You're enough, okay? Hey, look at me. Can you look at me? Regulus is silent for a beat, breathing again for a long moment before stepping back and shutting the balcony door. He still hesitates, and the moment of hesitation absolutely breaks James's heart. But inevitably, Regulus does turn to look at him, and his expression immediately fractures as soon as their eyes meet, his breath hitching as he goes very still. James forgets instantly what he was going to say, because Regulus is looking at him with wide eyes full of pure wonder, something reverent in his gaze. Reg, what is it? Your glasses, Regulus says, and his voice cracks. James's hand not on his cane flies up automatically to touch the corner of his frames, startled slightly to remember that they're there, perched on his nose like they never left. They still feel the same. You got your glasses back. Yeah, James never really gets to finish because Regulus closes the distance between them ridiculously fast and has James's face in his hands in seconds, kissing him like it's the very first time, and the last, and maybe it is. It doesn't take James very long to shift gears, immediately and wholeheartedly on board with this, everything else ceasing to exist pretty much instantly. His cane clatters carelessly to the floor as his arms fly up to slip around Regulus's waist, dragging him closer. Regulus goes stiff against him instantly, and James hastily drops his arms, not touching, which allows Regulus the space to relax, to sink into him. He does, in increments, making a small sound into the kiss, something weak and desperate that makes James tremble. Regulus is kissing James so fiercely, so deeply, that James can feel where his glasses press against his face, going a little wonky from the force of it. It lasts as long as it takes for James's leg to buckle, which is not nearly long enough, in his opinion. He doesn't even give a shit about the rising pain in his leg, because he's felt worse, and it's so muted, a dull throb in the background, that he can literally ignore it. Well, he can until his leg apparently decides it's done holding all his weight, and just gives out. James curses sharply as they break apart, because he stumbles and nearly falls. The only reason he doesn't collapse is because Regulus catches him quickly, holding him up with a grunt. It's artless and messy as they trip toward the bed, James letting out a long stream of furious expletives the whole way there, utterly raging about his predicament. He's not sure what's pissing him off more, the fact that he has the injury at all, or the fact that his leg is failing him when he's trusted in it his whole life, or the fact that a kiss that they started on their own, in private, got interrupted with a reminder of what they'd both rather forget. Are you okay? Regulus asks as he helps James ease down on the edge of the bed, staring at him with wide eyes. I'm fine, James snaps. Just fucking grand. Regulus swallows. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. No, you absolutely should have, James corrects quickly. In fact, if you wanted to, you could. I'm getting you a cane, Regulus cuts in firmly, not quite meeting his gaze as he draws back to do exactly that. James throws his hands up and mimes strangling some invisible entity towards the sky, or the universe, because there has to be some deity out there getting a kick out of fucking with him and making him miserable. He groans and flops back on Regulus's bed, fighting the ridiculous urge to kick and flail and scream at the top of his lungs. Oh, he's so fucking angry about this. They were kissing. It was just, they were... James? Regulus mutters, nudging him with his cane. James snatches it away and tosses it over to the side of the bed as he bolts right back up and grits out, Please, please do not let my leg get in the way of what we were just doing. I'm not, Regulus mumbles, then heaves a sigh when James presses his lips into a thin line. I swear, I'm not, James. There are countless ways we could do what we were doing, and more, that wouldn't be an issue for your leg. It's not that. So what is it? James asks warily. Regulus swallows. I shouldn't have done it to start with. Nothing has changed, all right? I still can't. Fuck, I couldn't even let you touch me. I shouldn't have done that. It was wrong. I'm sorry. Why did you? James murmurs. I couldn't help it, Regulus admits, a strain in his voice as he reaches out and gently touches the side of James's glasses. His face softens as he straightens them on James's face, and he looks so adoring that James's heart fucking riots. James leans closer, looking up at him. I'm not upset that you did. Far from it, in fact. If you want, we can just kiss, and I won't touch you. It doesn't have to mean anything. James, Regulus says flatly, arching an eyebrow at him, but James remains stubborn. Regulus sighs. I know you, you idiot. Of course it'll mean something, especially to you, and... He holds James's gaze, his voice a lot quieter as he exhales and confesses. It'll mean something to me, too. It'll mean too much, and it'll hurt, and aren't we hurt enough? Yes, exactly, it already hurts, so this won't change anything, James whispers. I know it doesn't change anything, love, and I don't expect it to. I don't need it to. Regulus closes his eyes, flexing his fingers before drawing his hand away from James's glasses. It'll only be good for as long as we're doing it, and then you'll regret it. Will I? James murmurs. I don't think I will. I think I'll be grateful that we did, even if it doesn't get us any closer to what we want. If you don't want to, that's one thing. If you're holding back because you're trying to protect me, that's something else entirely. Obviously I want to, Regulus snaps, as if insulted by the insinuation that he doesn't, which is a far cry from all the times he denied wanting James at all. It's still so shocking to see him being upfront and honest about his feelings, but James is realizing that Regulus was never lying to him before. He genuinely didn't know. You want me? I'm right here. I'm right fucking here, love, James breathes out. His heart thumps heavily in his chest, because Regulus tips himself forward as if he's slowly being reeled in. Use me, have me, then discard me, hurt me. I don't care, Regulus. You can do anything to me, and I'll thank you for it every time. Regulus's breath audibly hitches, and he sways forward, his fingers twitching restlessly. There's so much restraint packed in his frame, and it's almost painful to look at, and James, perhaps foolishly, wants to pluck at that restraint and bite down on it, worry it between his teeth and relish in the taste when it finally snaps. Every part of him craves it, wanting so badly for Regulus to, in so many words, just fucking lose it and stop holding himself back, regardless of consequences. Distantly, James knows that Regulus holds back for a reason, because he has trauma to navigate, because he can only go so far and give so much before they're stranded with nothing, no closer to what they ache for, never close enough. But that's okay. Well, it's not, but James has made his peace with it, and will continue to. And this, he just wants whatever Regulus will give him, whatever Regulus can give him. James will take it, anything, and never demand more. James took it when it was ignorance, and James took it when it was derision, and James took it when it was confusing, and James will take it when it hurts, gladly. Regulus has held a dagger to his throat, and some part of James had hoped he'd use it, just to have that from him, too. I don't want to hurt you anymore, Regulus whispers, and despite his words, he's moving closer, like the temptation is too hard to resist, which maybe goes to James's head a bit. He keeps forgetting that Regulus actually wants him, that he has any allure to Regulus at all, and rediscovering that is a rush every single fucking time. I want you too, James admits bluntly, utterly breathless, gazing up at him in awe. Hurt me. Just fucking ruin me. James, Regulus mumbles, as if in disapproval, but he's still not stopping his slow approach, so James figures he has no need to be ashamed of what he's saying. Think about it, love. A slap across the face is just a hand cradling a cheek with too much force, he says, his mouth dry. I can take it. I swear I can take it. I might even like the way it stings, so long as it's your hand that leaves the mark. Regulus swallows. You deserve better. Oh, trust me, this will do for now, James assures him, his entire body stinging with anticipation, as Regulus braces his knee on the edge of the bed next to James's thigh. What if I can never give you better? Regulus asks, still hesitating, his gaze guarded. You're the best I'll ever have, however I can have you, however briefly, James whispers, keeping his hands flat to the bed, fingers shaking. And what about you? Don't you deserve this? No, Regulus replies instantly, sounding certain. You do, you absolutely do, and you'll have it. If you want it, you'll have it, James declares, meaning that down to his fucking soul, and then his soul is alight because Regulus seems to give in, his hands reaching out to frame James's face. I'm sorry, Regulus rasps. I'm not, James whispers, craning forward as far as he can go, groaning helplessly when Regulus meets him halfway and kisses him. And there it is, the snap. Regulus's restraint shrivels into ash with a sizzle James swears he can hear where Regulus's palms cradle his cheek. It's pretty much instant, as if his resistance has been on a slow boil for a long time now, maybe a decade. The mere thought makes James's head spin with a mixture of delight and relief. And yes, yes, yes. Regulus clutches at his hair and pulls, yanking James's head back to rise up slightly and kiss him from a higher angle. like a benevolent god breathing life into James's lungs. He doesn't stop. He isn't stopping, and James feels like he's levitating as soon as it really hits him that it's actually happening, that they're actually doing this. He knows it's a bad idea, he just doesn't care. Regulus turns out to be quite the needy thing, much to James's internal delight. He's fucking clingy. He's demanding, even when they're just kissing. It's messy and desperate between them, Regulus steadily trying to get closer and kiss him deeper, a low whine escaping him every time James dares to separate even an inch for a small sip of much-needed oxygen. Okay, James chants breathlessly, flexing his fingers into the bed sheets, not really having much of a choice but to tip his head to the side so Regulus can latch onto his throat, because apparently pulling away from James would be a crime of some sort. It's just kissing, right? Just kissing, just this, and don't move, James. Stay just like this, Regulus mumbles into his skin, like a warning. I want you right here. Right here. Dazed, James chokes out a laugh and wheezes. Yeah, all right, whatever you want, love. You are so... Regulus doesn't even finish because he's made his way back to James's mouth, and he seems more preoccupied with that than talking. James feels simultaneously drunk and intensely clear-headed, lost in the sensation of Regulus all around him, and still mentally capturing every moment to hold on to forever. Regulus cards his fingers through James's hair, tugging roughly enough that James's entire body prickles. A shudder ripbles through him, and he clenches his fingers on the sheets, feeling like an engine seconds from combustion, seconds from bursting into flames. They don't slow down, they don't stop, they just let the world wash away from them, regardless of how much it's going to hurt when it inevitably crashes back down on them once more. It'll take a while, but later, much later, James will look back on this and wonder, sadly, if it was a parting gift, too. Remus has seen Sirius in various states of despair, but this is somehow much worse. Maybe it's because all of the things that were wrong before ended up mostly working out. He got his brother and best friend back, but there's no happy ending to this. Frankly, Remus finds it particularly crushing that he's so familiar with Sirius's despair, even more so than his joy. By a wide margin, Remus was far more exposed to Sirius's pain than his happiness, and it doesn't feel fair to him. He's thankful for every bit of Sirius that he got to have, but he'll always ache for the fact that he saw more tears than smiles. Why, Remus, why are you grabbing that? Sirius croaks, watching him with wide, watery eyes as he picks up his mask from where he originally sat it down on Sirius's stand. Usually he keeps it in the kitchen, but he'd come straight to Sirius's room as soon as he got in this morning, barely remembering to take the mask off at all before he went in. Sirius, Remus says softly, I'll have to put it back on when you all leave. I have to wait here for them to come retrieve me to travel back to Azkaban. I don't know exactly when that will be, so I have to wear it as soon as you go. Sirius's lips press into a thin line, and then he looks away as he blinks hard, swallowing thickly and taking a deep breath. He gives a jerky nod, then squeezes his eyes shut, looking pained. Come here, Sirius croaks, opening his eyes and waving him over, his face blotchy and red in a way Remus takes no delight in at all. He's a mess, even like this, and still beautiful. But Remus wants the blush he loves, the sweet one. Sirius isn't in the state to give it to him, as he outstretches his hand and wiggles his fingers. Let me hold it. My mask? Remus murmurs, admittedly a little bewildered, even as he shuffles over to pass it to Sirius. The mask, not your mask, Sirius corrects sharply, and Remus tucks his lips in, thinking it's best that he doesn't mention that his mask is quite literally his, because it's fitted to his face, built and made for him and him alone. What are you doing? Remus asks, stiffening as Sirius brings the mask up to his own face. He immediately hates the sight of it framed on Sirius, his stomach lurching. Sirius doesn't answer him, but he thankfully doesn't try to fully put the mask on. No, he just brings it to his face and proceeds to kiss the inside of it, like a loud, smacking smooch that makes Remus blink at him. There, Sirius declares decisively, giving a firm nod as he holds out the mask again. He catches Remus's gaze and says, without a hint of shame or embarrassment, This way, every time you have it on, I'm giving you a kiss. Remus stares at him, his chest pulsing with a strangled mix of fondness and pain. Oh, how he loves this man. Swallowing, he croaks, "Quickest way to make me never want to take it off." Sirius releases a hoarse laugh that seems to scrape out of him, and the tears are building in his eyes again. They're rimmed with red and puffy, his eyelashes clumped together. Remus reaches out to take the mask, and as soon as he has it, Sirius is colliding into him and wriggling into his arms, not for the first time, but possibly the last. Remus wraps his arms around him, holding onto the mask behind his back, and he presses a kiss to Sirius's cheek as he burrows in closer. "I have to go," Sirius chokes out. "I know," Remus says gently. Sirius holds onto him for a bit longer, then gives a quiet and rather adorable sniffle before shifting to lean on Remus, apparently determined to stay attached the whole way out the door. Remus adjusts, keeping one arm around him as they shuffle along, heading out into the main room. Pandora, Regulus, and James are already there, waiting by the door. James is leaning on his cane, looking at Regulus with unabashed focus, like that's all he can see. Alternatively, Regulus is looking anywhere but James, so he sees the moment that Remus and Sirius come in. Remus finds himself oddly warmed by the sympathy that flashes in his eyes. "Right," Pandora declares loudly, her voice shaking a bit. Her gaze is so fucking sad. "I have to go ahead, to let them know to get the train started, and I won't be traveling with you, so this is goodbye." "Aw, come here," James mumbles weakly, waving her over with a soft smile, and she instantly shuffles over to sort of just sag into his arms. "Regulus," Remus says quietly, "can I have a word?" Regulus blinks at him, darting a glance towards Sirius, who is frowning, most likely from the displeasure of having to let go, because that is what Remus is insinuating, yes? A beat later, Regulus gives a careful nod. Remus's lips twitch faintly when Sirius huffs in mild protest at the fact that Remus genuinely does detach away from him, but as always, he lets Remus do as he wishes. It's nice the way he turns away and shuffles over to murmur to James and Pandora, who seem to be checking on him, while Remus and Regulus cross the room to get far enough that they won't be overheard. "I'm not going to say anything, but I don't really think I have to," Remus says quietly, holding Regulus's gaze. He briefly breaks from it to look over at Sirius, and Regulus follows his gaze before meeting his eyes again. "You know what I'm asking, don't you?" "Yes," Regulus whispers. "So will you?" Remus checks, wanting confirmation, even though a part of him already knows. Regulus swallows. "I'll try. If he lets me, I will. But that task is usually granted to James, and James only. I'm not asking James, I'm asking you. James, I don't have to ask. But you," Remus sighs, "you're a lot like Sirius about these things, thinking of the act of taking care of people like it's currency, and you can go bankrupt, or like an obligation, a task that you can fail. That's not what it is. It's a choice, Regulus. I'm asking you to make it." "Okay," Regulus rasps, blinking a little rapidly and nodding carefully. "Yes, okay, I will." "Good," Remus murmurs, "because that means something, and it'll mean a lot to both of you if you let it. He deserves that, after everything, and so do you." Thanks," Regulus blurts out, stilted, cringing a little bit as soon as it falls out of his mouth. Thank you for." "I know," Remus cuts in, because Regulus is struggling. He gives him a faint smile and nods, because he does know that Regulus is thanking him for taking care of Sirius, and for when you know, what you did when I couldn't. Regulus falters, then just seems to give up, looking genuinely dejected that he can't figure out how to properly express his gratitude for Remus helping with the sphere of water. It's somehow sad and amusing all at once. "Well, what are friends for, right?" Remus says lightly, and Regulus sort of just gives a wary nod, but Remus takes it for what it is. He hums, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to kiss your brother until he has to leave." Regulus doesn't even protest, complain, or wrinkle his nose, which is how Remus knows this is a solemn moment for them all, but especially himself and Sirius. Remus stays true to his word, though. The second he's within range, Sirius sneaks right back into his side, and Remus cups his jaw to kiss him. He doesn't care that the other three are close by. Some part of him is strangely grateful that this moment is seen by others, known, bared to the light, so it's more real. If Sirius ever needs to ask, James and Regulus will know. They do break apart when Pandora clears her throat, assuming she wants their attention, but that's not it at all. She's focusing on Regulus. So much affection and sadness in her eyes, all at once, that it's genuinely heartbreaking. Regulus is visibly wary, but he even caves under the force of the Pandora effect. Regulus slowly, cautiously reaches out to grab Pandora's hand, his touch delicate, like he might snatch it away quickly. But he doesn't. He brings her hand to his mouth and presses a careful kiss to the back of her fingers. Pandora beams at him, watching him kiss her hand so tenderly that it somehow makes them both more fragile. Like they're being so careful because they're more likely to break. Regulus is softer with Pandora than Remus has ever seen him with anyone, which he thinks is why Regulus has tried so hard to keep her at arm's length. But that's the Pandora effect. She wriggles her way into your heart every single time, just the same as she cradles you in hers. Regulus drops her hand immediately after, but Pandora looks so fucking pleased anyway. You don't even have to let him go, James announces, walking forward and legitimately just dragging both Remus and Sirius into a hug with one arm unprompted. Remus isn't expecting it to hit him as hard as it does, honestly, but it slams right into his chest and nearly barrels him over. All he can remember is how James spoke to him every day from the very beginning, treating him with such kindness and warmth, like a friend he was delighted to make, even though Remus never had anything to offer him but himself. For James, that was enough. Just Remus was enough. James is warm against them, and he smells strongly of eucalyptus shower gel and shampoo. Remus holds his back with one hand, the other around Sirius's waist, and Sirius's free arm wraps around James's back too. Their fingers overlap between James's shoulders and even their pinkies holding on to each other, not ready to let go. Okay, I have to go, Pandora says, sounding choked up. James draws back, and she's right there, waiting. Can I? Yes, come here, Remus replies, keeping his arm held out and waving her closer with his hand. She doesn't make Sirius let go either, not that anyone really could. She just sinks into them both and holds on for a long moment. Remus has never really noticed until now, but he practically swallows her with his sighs, making it easy for him to rest his chin on the top of her head. She squeezes them, then takes a deep breath and lets go. Pandora doesn't linger, giving out a last round of goodbyes and rushing out to handle what she needs to, regretfully informing them that they have maybe 20 minutes before they need to follow. Sirius stays latched onto Remus's side, and regardless of whatever issues they may have, Regulus and James sort of drift off to give Sirius and Remus their privacy. They're not talking or looking at each other, just sort of standing next to each other, with so much tension between them that it's like a third person joining them. They're hopeless, Sirius mutters with a heavy sigh, shaking his head and turning in Remus's arms to face him like he doesn't even want to look at them. They'll figure it out eventually, Remus says quietly. You think so? I think that's the law of average. It's all about balance, you know? There can't be too much of one thing, not even bad things. Someday, somehow, good will come. Sirius's lips curl up. Optimistic of you. Well, I have my proof, don't I? All the awful shit I've dealt with, and then one day, with no warning, there you are, Remus murmurs, gently stroking up and down Sirius's back. I'll be back. I'll see you in a year, Sirius croaks, his hand sliding up Remus's chest slowly. Okay, is all Remus says, because he doesn't want to argue with Sirius about this. He doesn't let himself hope for it, or expect it, because he knows better. You know, a lot can happen in a year. I know, Sirius whispers, flexing his fingers on Remus's shoulder, before slowly grappling his way down Remus's arms. He gives a tight smile as Remus arches an eyebrow at him in blatant curiosity. Like you said, a lot can happen in a year. I could forget the shape of you, the smell of you, the way your hair falls, and the shade of your eyes. I want to memorize you. Remus's heart clenches. That's not exactly what I meant. What did you mean? Sirius, I want you to know you are under no obligation whatsoever to wait for me in any capacity. Remus, Sirius cuts in, an edge to his tone. You could meet someone, Remus insists, his voice low and fervent. And if you do, that's okay. He swallows down the bitter taste of jealousy and envy. Just don't hold yourself back from anyone or anything, certainly not from me. Don't hold yourself to the standard of savior, because you're not, Sirius. You're not my savior, and I don't need you to be. The muscles in Sirius's cheek twitches from where he's visibly clenching his jaw. There won't be anyone else. You already know that. I don't feel that way about people. You can't accept pleasure, Remus reminds him. There's no shame in it. That's yours, remember? No, you don't, Sirius grimaces and shakes his head, heaving a sigh. Perhaps I wasn't clear before. I mean, I literally don't feel that way for people. Sexually, I mean. I didn't even feel that way for you, not at first. It took a bit of time, and it took trust. The sex part of it, at least. And I still don't, well, I never want to have sex. I only want to have sex because it's with you. Does that make sense at all? Remus sits on that for a second, then nods. Yeah, it does. That's okay, Remus tells him, because it is. It's not his job, or anyone's job, to tell any other person who or how they're allowed to want or not want. Just, if there's anyone that you click with in the next year, I don't want you to. Remus, I know what you're trying to say. I really do, and it's noble of you, Sirius interrupts. But you're the only one I want, all right? It's as simple as that. I'm going to think about you every day. I'm going to miss you. He exhales shakily, blinking hard. I will miss you so much, all the time. There's no space for anything else, because I want our something, and I will wait for it. I'd wait forever, if I had to. Well, in that case, a year is nothing. It's a blink, Remus whispers, his voice thick as he leans forward to press their foreheads together, eyes drifting shut. A year. We can do a year, Sirius whispers back, and Remus tries to convince himself to agree, because they have no choice either way. They're going to spend a year apart regardless, and maybe even longer, because even now Remus doesn't hold on to the hope that they will see each other again. So if this is all they have, then Remus intends to make the most of it. He draws Sirius closer, holding on to him as he brings their mouths together, kissing him slow and sweet and steady, cherishing each second of it. The kiss drags out as if they have all the time in the world, and Remus pours every bit of love he feels for this man into it, unable to say it. He refuses to say it just because he's scared he'll never get another chance. Some rebellious part of him insists that if he doesn't say it, then he'll have to see Sirius again just to tell him. They kiss, unhurried and unhindered, and then they break apart to cling to each other. Remus squeezes his eyes shut and buries his face into Sirius's hair, while Sirius tucks his face into Remus's shoulder. In silence they breathe, and that is all. And then, inevitably, they have to let go. Neither of them want to, that much is clear, but they have no other option. Sirius wavers the second they split apart, swaying forward again like he's going to fall right back into him. Remus swells thickly and steps back, hungrily studying Sirius's face, even as he backs up toward the door. Bye, Remus, Sirius says softly. So soft it's a mere breath. Bye, sweetheart, Remus murmurs, his voice thick and his chest aching and his eyes stinging. Sirius takes in a shuddering breath, face red in the worst way, from strain, from hurting. He looks away, then ducks his head and whips around, swiveling past James and Regulus to reach for the door, like he's rushing to escape all at once. Remus watches them go, feeling as if his chest is splitting open. The door opens, then shuts. Sirius hasn't looked back. Slowly, Remus turns and walks to the side of the room, standing one step in front of the wall, unobtrusive and nothing more than a shadow. He raises his mask and puts it on, clipping it onto his face, where it seems to strangle him more now than it ever has. He blinks the tears out of his eyes, puts his hands behind his back, and ducks his head. And that is all. The train ride home is long and silent. Regulus isn't speaking, and neither is Sirius, so James doesn't either. He doesn't break the silence, he doesn't really know how. There are tarts on the table, and James doesn't look at them. Just 2 weeks ago, he rode a train into the Hallow and found it in himself to smile, to invite laughter and warmth in the heavy reality that had draped over all of their shoulders then. He remembers it, teasing Regulus, laughing uproariously when Regulus tossed a tart at Sirius's head. It feels like a lifetime ago. James feels like all of those people are gone. He aches for them, for the people they were before all of this started, and he doesn't think they'll ever get them back. There are still them, James, Sirius, and Regulus, just as they have always been, because nothing can take that from them. But they have been altered. They have been shaped by cruel, capricious hands. For all that they are still them, they can never again be the same. The thing is, that is what life is, in reality. Life is just death and rebirth, consistently, over and over, in small capacities that build into something noticeable over time. It's supposed to be gradual. You are not the same as you were the year prior, or 10 before that, or as you were when you came into this world, but you are you in your ever-changing shape, growing and learning and living. Even stagnant, there is a shift within you, something you don't always realize until you think to look back and see how far you've come, a constant journey. It's not supposed to be like this. Yes, everything can change in a split second, and you with it, but it isn't something that's ever meant to go to depths such as these. 2 weeks, only 2 weeks, and they're unrecognizable to who they were, in the way people are only supposed to be after years. Some things remain. There is comfort in that. There is comfort in knowing that some things can never be changed or taken away, no matter what else is. The passage of time feels unreal. James genuinely struggles with it. He knows how much Sirius struggled with his memory after returning from the arena. For James, he thinks his struggle is with time and his own placement in the world. There are moments where he doesn't know where he is, lost in himself and immediately going right back to the arena, needing to be drawn back here in the flow of time. He feels that way when the train stops, not entirely sure how much time has passed, not entirely convinced that they haven't just arrived in the Hallow, where he'll have to prepare to go into the arena and fight to get Regulus home. He doesn't know. He can't be sure, not completely. I have to go speak to the mayor, Sirius rasps as they all stand up, each of them moving cautiously as if none of them can fully believe this is real. I'll get everything in order for both of you to receive your winnings as victors, and you'll both be assigned houses of your own in the victor's village. You don't have to be there for it, so if you want to... Can I come with you? Regulus cuts in. He looks Sirius right in the eye, holding his gaze. I don't want to see them yet. Yeah, Reggie, that's fine, Sirius murmurs. Well, if you want, I'll go with you. Regulus nods carefully. Thank you. You don't have to come, Sirius says, looking directly at James now. They'll probably be waiting for you at the gate. Once everything is handled, you'll come back, right? James asks, feeling ridiculously guilty for it, his gaze darting toward Regulus, who is staring down at his fingers. Yeah, of course, Sirius whispers. Come on, James, let me help you off the train. You get off first, Regulus. So that's what they do. Regulus walks ahead of them, heading for the doors and disappearing through them first. James and Sirius are much slower to disembark, because James has been sitting without moving for hours, and his leg is not very happy with him. It's frustrating because his leg hurts if he uses it too much, and it hurts if he doesn't use it enough. It's stiff and aching, causing him to lean on Sirius and his cane hard as they make their way down to the aisle of the train. It had been a bitch getting on the train, though Sirius hadn't let him fall, and it's equally difficult getting off. Again, Sirius doesn't let him fall. He helps James to the bottom step, gets off first, then stands on the edge of the platform to hold his hand out to James, keeping him steady as he makes it over. It causes a spike of pain in his leg that has him grinding his teeth and pausing as he waits for it to dull again. When James looks up, his stomach drops right out from underneath him, because he loses time and gains too much of it all at once. Nothing makes sense. It's snowing. There's snow on the ground, and there are flurries gently coming down. And how's that possible? It was snowing when they left. Shouldn't it be spring? Has winter come and gone and come back around? It doesn't make sense. It takes him a moment to piece it all together. Spring is on its way, and this is still the winter he left behind. It's hard for him to fathom how much could have happened, so much change in and around him, but the season is still the same. It's only been 2 weeks. Winter is still here. Regulus has snow in his hair, and he's beautiful. He's standing in front of them, waiting, and there's snow in his hair, just like there was on his 15th birthday. For a second, James feels like he goes in and out of time, yanked back and forth between the past and the present. Regulus flickers in front of him, 15 and close, 25 and never close enough. You'll be all right? Sirius asks, drawing his attention. Do you want us to walk you to the gate? James shakes his head. No, I've got it. You two go on. Sirius nods wearily, and after a moment he lets go. James adjusts to his cane, nodding back before slowly making his way forward. Regulus joins Sirius. They have to go the other way, up the path. James looks back, unable to help it, and he feels his heart lurch and give a gentle keen when he sees Regulus looking back, snow in his hair, holding James's gaze with lovely eyes, those eyes of his. Together, all at once, they look away. The walk to the gate is slow and arduous. The snow isn't quite sticking to the ground, just a soft dusting that blankets it, but he feels unsteady despite it. He doesn't want to fall. He's worried his cane might slip out from underneath him, with only slush on the ground to brace against. Every stilted step is measured and careful, and he doesn't rush. The gate isn't open when he gets there, but he only has to press the buzzer on the side he's on once before it springs open. It's framed by a large brick wall, and the gate itself is made of metal with no way to see through it or around it. He waits patiently on the other side, his heart racing, and then he chokes out a harsh breath the moment he sees his parents standing eagerly on the other side. Some part of him had been afraid that they wouldn't be, but they're there. Right there. James doesn't even get to take one step. As soon as they see him, Effie and Monty are rushing right for him. He gets to suck in one deep, gasping breath before they're on him, wrapping him in their arms from either side, holding him up as he instantly sags into them both. He clutches at them desperately, and when he exhales, it comes out as a sob. They hold him, and he's home.